Welcome to the story. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and support me. Garona's boots barely made a sound as she slipped through the corridors of Gromish Hold, her green-skinned fingers brushing the cold stone wall. She'd always move like a shadow, blending into the background, whether she was in Stormwind or Orgrimmar. It was the curse and blessing of being half orc, half elf, belonging to neither world, yet walking through both unseen. Tonight was different, though. Tonight, Garona had been summoned by the war chief himself. She stopped before the heavy iron doors of Garrosh Hellscream's chamber, her chest tight with the weight of expectation. For as long as she could remember, she had been used by powerful men who saw in her only a tool sharp, deadly, and disposable. But she had no illusions about her purpose. Her half-breed heritage ensured that no one ever truly trusted her. And why should they? Her loyalty was as elusive as the wind, shifting with her survival. A low growl from within the chamber snapped her from her thought. The guards, massive orcas with thick muscle and brutish expressions, pushed open the doors without a word, and Garona stepped inside. Garrosh stood at the center of the room, his broad, heavily muscled body radiating menace. His skin gleamed a dark bronze beneath the torchlight, and the tusks that jutted from his lower jaw caught the fire as flickered. His armor was bloodstained from some recent battle, and the heavy iron of his axe was still wet with gore. He had been fighting when wasn't hate. "You came at Garrosh," rumbled his voice like stones, grinding together. Garona inclined her head, saying nothing. She always preferred silence over pointless conversation. Garrosh eyed her with those bloodshot, piercing eyes that had seen more death than anyone's should. He circled her slowly, like a wolf assessing its prey. "I have a task for you, assassin." Her heart skipped, but outwardly her expression remained calm. "A task?" Garrosh grunted and slammed his axe into the stone floor, the sound reverberating through the chamber. "King Varian Rin's Stormwind. I want him dead." For the briefest moment, Garona's sense composure faltered. Varian Rin. She had been in Stormwind before, had crossed paths with the king more than once. But it was not the man that unsettled her, it was the implications of his death. Rin was not just a king, he was a stabilizing force, the thin thread holding the alliance from falling apart at the seam. "Why now?" she asked her, voice carefully measured. Garrosh snarled, baring his tusks, parried because his existence is a threat to the hordes of future. He pretends to talk peace, but his very presence is poison. As long as he lives, the alliance will grow stronger, and they will crush us. Varian Rinnan must die, and you will be the one to deliver the killing blow. Garona turned her head slightly, hiding her tightening jaw. "Sigh, and what happens after his death? You know, this will ignite a war like none before. Do you want endless bloodshed?" Garrosh's laughter boomed through the chamber, as though she had just told the greatest joke. "War is inevitable. Assassin, all I am doing is making sure we strike first. The Horde was born in battle, it thrives in war, and once Rain is gone, the alliance will crumble, then we will crush what remains." Garona's fingers twitched near the hilt of her dagger, but she kept them still. There was no defying Garrosh, not openly. She had seen what happened to those who did the war chief, so fury was legend. "I'll do it," she said, her voice cold and emotionless. The words felt like iron chains tightening around her throat. Garrosh grinned, satisfied. "Cured? Will you leave for Stormwind tonight? Return only when his blood is on your hand." Garona was halfway to the city gates before the weight of the assignment truly began to settle on her. The jagged peaks of Orgrimmar loomed in the distance behind her, the red-tinged sky reflecting the violence that constantly brewed within the Horde. She couldn't say she was surprised by Garrosh. Demand assassination was her trade, and she'd been given worse tasks before. Still, this one carried a heaviness that pressed down on her, like a physical force. Varian Rin was no ordinary mark. Killing him would not just be the death of a king. It would be the spark that ignited a war unlike any Azeroth had ever seen. And Garona wasn't too sure if that was something she could live with. As she traveled through the war-torn landscapes, memories of her past flooded her mind, memories of being used as a weapon by both sides. The Alliance had never truly accepted her, but neither had the Horde. Her mixed blood had ensured that she was an outcast wherever she went, valued only for her skills in death and deception. But now something was different. She couldn't put her finger on it, but as the dusty road stretched ahead of her, the thought of Varian Renna's face haunted her. He had always treated her with an odd sense of respect, even after knowing who and what she was. He had seen through her hardened exterior once, had spoken to her not as an assassin but as a person. Could she really kill him? Stormwind spires rose into view, white stone gleaming in the sunlight, the stark contrast to the jagged, harsh lines of Orgrimmar. Girona had always marveled at the differences between the two cities. Their very architecture seemed to represent the values of their people. Stormwind was built on unity, on the collective power of its people. Orgrimmar, on the other hand, was raw strength, survival of the fittest. She slipped into the city easily, cloaked in a long robe that hid her distinctive features. The streets bustled with the noise of daily life, merchants shouting, children playing, and soldiers patrolling. It was a world that felt foreign to her, yet somehow appealing. In the shadows, she watched Varian Rinnan from a distance, studying him like any other target. He moved with purpose, his armor gleaming as he addressed the citizens, giving them hope and strength. There was something about him that unsettled her, and it wasn't just the assignment. She had seen leaders rise and fall, many of them corrupt and hungry for power. But Varian was different. He ruled with both wisdom and compassion, two traits Garrosh sorely lacked. Days passed as Girona continued her observation. She followed Varian discreetly, slipping through alleyways and hidden passages. She watched him interact with his people, his son Anduin, and his advisors. With each passing moment, her resolve weakened. The night before the planned assassination, Girona found herself perched atop one of Stormwind Cease walls, looking out over the vast cityscape below. A voice in her mind screamed at her to finish the job, to kill Varian and be done with it. But there was another voice, quieter, yet persistent, that told her to stop, to think. In that moment, she knew that Garrosh's snuff was not hers. She had been used as a tool of war for far too long, but she was not blind. She had seen enough bloodshed. She had seen enough lives destroyed by men like Garrosh. And now she was being asked to do the same, to perpetuate the cycle of violence that had already claimed too many lives. But what could she do if she didn't kill Varian? Garrosh would brand her a traitor. She would be hunted by the Horde, by her own people. Yet, if she did kill him, she would plunge the world into chaos, a war that could last generations. She stood at the precipice of a decision that would change everything, not just for her, but for the entire world. The day of the peace summit arrived. Varian, flanked by his closest advisors and his son Anduin, entered the Grand Hall, where negotiations were set to take place. Girona was already there, hidden among the crowd, a dagger concealed beneath her robe. The plan was simple: strike when Varian's attention was elsewhere. It would be over in seconds, and no one would be able to stop it. But as she watched Varian speak to the assembled diplomats, something inside her shifted. She saw the hope in his eyes, the earnest desire for peace. This was no tyrant. This was a man willing to fight for a future where their children wouldn't have to live under the constant threat of war. Her hand hovered near the dagger, her heart racing. She could end it all now. She could follow Garrosh's orders and ensure the Horde's dominance. But at what cost? In that moment, Girona made her choice. Girona's sand trembled as it hovered near the dagger hidden beneath her robe. She could feel the cold steel just inches away, the familiar weight promising a swift, clean kill. She had done this before, killed without hesitation, without remorse. But now, standing in the Grand Hall of Stormwind, watching King Varian Wren speak with such conviction about peace, something in her felt different. For so long she had been a weapon, a tool used by those in power. Garrosh, the Alliance, her own bloodline, none had ever cared for her as a person, only what she could do. But here in the heart of Stormwind, surrounded by enemies, she saw something she hadn't seen in a long time: hope. Varian wasn't just another ruler vying for control. He genuinely wanted to end the endless bloodshed, the war that had consumed both the Horde and the Alliance for generations. Girona's eyes shifted to Varian's son Anduin. The boy stood tall beside his father, his face a mix of youth and wisdom far beyond his years. He radiated calm and strength, a reflection of his father, set leadership. Anduin's gaze briefly swept over the crowd, landing on Girona for the briefest of moments. She felt exposed, vulnerable, as if he could see through her very soul. But then his attention shifted, and she was left alone with her thought. She couldn't redo it. The realization hit her like a blow to the chest. Garrosh's orders were clear: kill Varian and sow the seeds of chaos that would ignite the next war. But as she stood there, surrounded by people who believed in something greater, she knew she couldn't be a part of it anymore. She couldn't be the one to light the fire that would consume everything. Her heart pounded in her chest as Varian finished his speech. The crowd erupted into polite applause, though the tension in the air remained thin. Peace negotiations between the Horde and Alliance had always been fragile, and any misstep could break the tenuous balance. Garena's fingers twitched, instinctively reaching for the dagger again, but she stopped herself. Her mind raced. What now? If she didn't complete the mission, Garrosh would hunt her down. She had seen firsthand what happened to those who defied him. And yet the thought of killing Varian, of plunging Azeroth into another cycle of war, filled her with a dread she couldn't shake. As the crowd began to disperse, Varian remained at the center of the room, talking quietly with his advisor. Garona saw her chance. If she wanted to stop this, to end the madness, before it could begin, she had to act now. She slipped through the crowd, moving like a shadow, her heartbeat loud in her ears. When she was close enough, she pulled back her hood, revealing her face for the first time. There was no point in hiding now. She had made her decision. Varian turned, and for a moment their eyes met. Recognition flashed across his face, followed by a flicker of confusion. Garona, Tari, he said, his voice low, wary. Garona did not flinch. She didn't waver. Sarek, we need to talk to you, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Her words were steady, but her heart raced. She could feel the eyes of the guards around her, the tension mounting as they recognized who she was. Varian held up a hand, signaling the guards to stand down. You leave us, Tariki ordered, his gaze never leaving her. Once they were alone, the weight of the moment settled between them. Varian crossed his arms, his expression unreadable. Shuron, what is this about? Garona, why are you here? Garona hesitated, the words catching in her throat. She had never been one for explanations, but this time, it was different. You were supposed to die, she said finally, the truth heavy on her tongue. Diras sent me to kill you. Varian saw his face darkened, but he didn't. He seemed surprised. Tree, and yet here I stand. Garona nodded slowly. I can't do it, Varian. I've spent my whole life being used by others doing their dirty work. But this isn't tea, right? Killing you won't stop the war. It will only make things worse. Varian studied her for a long moment, his blue eyes searching her. Why now? He asked quietly. Sarah, everything you've done. I stop now. Garona exhaled slowly, her gaze falling to the floor. Because I am tired, Varian. Tired of being used, tired of the bloodshed. I don't want to be a weapon anymore. Silence fell between them, heavy, intense. Garona waited for Varian, sense response, unsure of what to expect. She had just confessed to attempting to kill him. For all she knew, he could order her execution right here, right now, and maybe she deserved it. But then Varian did something she hadn't expected. He stepped forward, his expression softening just enough to reveal the man beneath the king's mantle. I believe you, she said, his voice quiet but firm. Garona blinked, taken aback. You believe me? Varian nodded. You've had chances to kill me before, and yet I am still standing. That tells me something. Garona stared at him, unsure of what to say. She had expected anger, suspicion, anything but this. The weight of her decision pressed down on her even harder. Now, Farg, what happens next? Fear, she asked, her voice unsteady. Varian considered her for a moment before speaking. Sorry, you were free to go. Garona. Do you know this? Garrosh won't stop. He'll send others. The peace we've been trying to build is fragile, and there are forces on both sides that would rather see it broken. Garona nodded slowly. She knew he was right. Garrosh's ambitions ran deep, and if he couldn't use her to carry out his plans, he would find someone else. I want to go back to him, she said, her voice resolute, but I can't stay here. Either my life ... It doesn't fit in either world. Varian gave her a long, measured look before he spoke again. This is always a place for someone who seeks redemption. Garona. Maybe not here, not now, but someday you've taken the first step by choosing not to kill. Don't waste that. Garona swallowed the lump in her throat and nodded once more. Thank you, she said quietly, though the words felt inadequate. Without another word, she turned and left, disappearing into the shadows of Stormwind as easily as she had come. But this time, something had changed. For the first time in her life, she had made a choice that was hers and hers alone. As she walked through the darkened streets, the weight of her decisions settled heavily on her shoulders. She knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. Darash would never forgive her betrayal, and she would be hunted by both sides. But for the first time in years, she felt a sliver of hope. Maybe there was a future for her, one where she wasn't just a tool for others to use.